everyone. Welcome to another Random Talk Sunday, and today I thought it would be cool to briefly address my thoughts in regards to Independence Day, in particular American Independence Day, since that is a quite relatively known holiday, I think, pretty much throughout the world, even though only the United States technically celebrates it. So I thought I would kind of go a little bit into the history of it and also sort of express my feelings in regards to the holiday. Um, so in case nobody is familiar, Independence Day celebrates the day when the United States um, seceded from Britain almost and I guess you could say sort of an informal way by just signing the Declaration of Independence, stating that, yep, no, we're not going to be part of Great Britain anymore. Now, the interesting thing about that is that even though the Declaration of Independence was signed on the 4th by all the founders and representatives that were responsible for initiating American independence, it actually was voted on the 2nd. So they technically declared themselves independent from Britain on the 2nd, even though they did not sign the whole document until the 4th. So that's kind of usually a disconnect that has happened over the years. But I think a lot of the time we remember the 4th being really the day of independence because of the Declaration of Independence, and also because that's really what a lot of people initially thought would be the day to celebrate sort of independence. But there were some within some founders in particular who felt that it should have been on the 2nd as opposed to the 4th, but sort of the popular opinion overrided that, and we still consider the 4th to be really the day of independence. And the interesting thing is Independence Day was really celebrated really from its inception. Even during when the war was going on, people had celebrations of being independent because they felt like that they were independent, even though, there was still a war going on between the independence of the United States from Britain. So it's kind of bizarre, it's like celebrating your Declaration of Independence rather than the actual independence itself, so it's an interesting holiday in that respect because we don't really, this is really when the Revolutionary War started, as a result of the American colonies choosing to not become part of or basically disassociate themselves from Britain. So that's another thing that's I thought was rather interesting is just their continued sort of celebration of something that could or could not have been, and probably wouldn't have been if it weren't for France, and all those people who helped out, largely being the French. But it wasn't declared a national holiday, though, until 1870. So it's still relatively old as as far as American history is concerned. And it was sort of initially celebrated in the States even beforehand, and was largely in part celebrated even when the Revolutionary War was still going on. So people still held a huge significance to this day, even though, it wouldn't be years later until actually Britain gave up and said, okay, yeah, you can be independent now. So that's something that's rather interesting, because I guess it was sort of like in the eyes of the American or colonial public, they saw themselves as independent, even though they still had a war to ultimately make that a reality. Also, another interesting thing too is the way in which they celebrated the Independence Day was rather different than how we celebrate it today. Um, but there's still some things that sort of remain in common. Back then, usually cannon fire and musket fire was fairly common, and also carrying around these, I guess they called them mock funerals, of the King George of England. So basically, they would just, kind of make fun of him as a means of celebrating the holiday. Which, again, during that time makes sense because of its sort of political significance. Um, but obviously, we don't do that anymore. But the oldest tradition that sort of has been carried on and has occurred pretty much since sort of the founding of the holiday is fireworks. The fireworks were common back in the day, and they are still the primary form of entertainment for this holiday. Um, so they have had this huge importance as far as uh, giving the holiday sort of this identity and making everyone sort of feel happy that they are no longer under a tyrant. So, um, the interesting thing that's also actually really cool is that there are actually some presidents who actually died on the 4th of July. I believe it was literally the 50th anniversary when Jefferson and Adams died, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. They were both dead on the same year, on the same day. And that being the 4th of July, which is rather interesting and kind of, it just shows you how bizarre things how they just happen, you know, when you would probably wouldn't think that they would, but they do. And on the 50th anniversary too. I mean, and I guess it's kind of sort of a probably good through their family's perspective because it's a day that really was a huge, or at least left a huge impact on their lives and is sort of part of their legacy. So I guess if you can die on a very important day that helped shape history, then and was really is what made you an influential um, president and eventual representative and eventually president, then it's probably a good way to go. Also, James Monroe was another president who died on July 4th. So, but that's just something that's kind of interesting and sort of I think some people might overlook or might not even know about actually. But I really enjoy this holiday for its kind of patriotism, but I don't think it's as, it's not really like honed in into one specific um, American, I guess you could say, group. Like, for example, Veterans Day is for veterans, and uh, Memorial Day is for those who have died in battle. But here it's pretty much for everybody, for the whole country. So it's not specific to one group of Americans specifically. So I think that's something that's really what makes this holiday such a influential one because it just rings in so much impact onto everybody because it is really a holiday celebrating our ourselves as a country and as a group of people. And sort of getting together and having barbecues and doing the family get together thing is just something that is so uh, traditionally American, um, but it reflects onto sort of who we are, and we sort of kind of end up, I think, embracing this kind of unified identity as Americans when this holiday is sort of commemorated. Um, and it's so widespread, throughout pretty much every uh, city or even small town within the United States. You have fireworks and uh, people sort of taking part and trying to bring something forward to the local community. So it is a fairly uh, localized but yet national holiday because everybody's doing it, but everybody's doing it within their own uh, town or city or in their own special way. So I think that's really what makes the holiday interesting, and it's nice to always have that extra day off for the 4th of July. And it's a nice sort of tribute um, to our country. So it's a cool holiday for what it is. Um, is it as maybe fun or as maybe intimate as something like Christmas? Probably not, but at the same time, it's still enjoyable and it's still a nice way to kind of celebrate the summer. Um, but yeah, I think that's really ultimately all I can say when it comes to this particular holiday and the topic for this particular video. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care.